Okay, so what we're going to look at today is the War Powers Resolution, legislation passed in 1973. But before getting to that piece of legislation and concern and controversy around it, we want to start with what the Constitution says with regards to war matters. And if you pull out your Constitution and go to Article 1, Section 8, which is called the Enumerated Powers, you're going to get a long list of what Congress can do. And these things that Congress can do are quite specific. So we know that Congress has the power to declare a war. We know that Congress raises the military, that Congress regulates commerce and has overall power of the purse. And then when you go to Article 2 and start trying to fish around for the president's powers in war, you don't have such a clear list, but rather you have not even a power, but a role. So this is interesting. This is a role. It doesn't actually specify the powers as Commander-in-Chief. But it's reasonable to assume that as Commander-in-Chief, you can direct your troops, you can set goals, come up with strategy, and deploy troops when needed. A specific thing given to the President, specific power to appoint ambassador, of course, needs Senate approval. Negotiate treaties, again, to make it official, needs Senate approval. These are specific, but when you look at them, they might not seem as powerful as the list over here. So at first glance, it seems that the intention was for Congress to have more power in war and peace. Or the intention was leave it vague so that the president has the ability constitutionally to respond in crisis. We do want our president to be, our crisis manager. And if something does happen that threatens national security, the nice thing that Hamilton argued in Federalist 70 is that the president is one person and can make swift decisions. If we, in any type of crisis, went to Congress, those 535 people might debate too long. Or when it comes to security and the need for secrecy in national security, that could be compromised by having 535 people discussing. So you can see that there is some ambiguity about war powers. Another way to think of this is Congress can declare war, but in essence, the president can make war. And you don't want to confuse those verbs. They're very significant. So if you were on an FRQ to say that the president declares war, you would have to be marked incorrect, even if what you mean is this. So if you want to say this, you need to say make war, direct troops. But if you use that word declare, Congress technically declares war. So post-World War II, there's been an augment of presidential power, particularly with foreign policy. And it's with the Gulf of Tonkin that Congress starts to become very concerned with returning power back to Congress and away from the president. So what we're going to look at is the War Powers Resolution. A couple things about the War Powers Resolution is it's supposed to return power back to Congress. But when you read this debate, and this is given out in class, you're going to see how the War Powers Resolution, although on paper, is there to remind the president of Congress's important role in foreign policy. Nevertheless, presidents still have really asserted their authority. So I'd like you to first go through this side. Pause this while you read it, and then I'll tell you what to mark. So pause, read. Okay, and now you're back. So this is, the meat of the War Powers Resolution, and you should know that's known as the 60-day rule. This part C, this would be the teeth of the legislation, meaning that the president should do all this. But if the president has acted in a way counter to what Congress would want, before the 60-day deadline, Congress can end an overseas intervention through a concurrent resolution. That just means both chambers voted on it. And then if Congress votes on that, both houses pass it, the president cannot veto it. This type of action where Congress comes in and tries to reverse what a president's done, that would be a legislative veto. And this is really the teeth of the legislation. In 1983, this part was made void. No legislative veto. The Supreme Court ruled on a case and determined that there is no legislative veto in the Constitution. So this being null and void, struck down as unconstitutional, leaves this as very symbolic, without real force behind it. Okay, and then flip over here, and you can see kind of the arguments on both sides. I recommend you go, AA, then go BB, and then CC to understand it. By the way, this is the case that says no legislative veto. Oh, it says right there. No legislative veto. No Part C. Okay, and that is it for the War Powers Resolution. Let me know if you have any questions.